go live, which we're live now.
Hey, Kyle Thompson, like behind the beards.
Hey, wow. Wow, just call him out right on the live.
Right on the live, that's right.
Yeah, I did that months ago, right?
Well, no, it says like right now. Huh.
Oh, that's
Weird.
that's funny.
Is that gonna start being like a prereq to come on the show?
That's right.
We're gonna need you to go and like the show first, please.
We would have so and so on, but they're not faithful followers, so we can't do that.
That's so funny.
Oh, I don't know why this always wants me to connect WhatsApp.
Because, man, WhatsApp is the future of nothing. It's amazing how like there was a lot of that, and now I don't see very much of it.
Um, Everyone who I communicate with that is not living in the States uses WhatsApp.
Yes, yeah. That's
Well,
because it's a good overseas. That's I think that's what its primary usage was supposed to be for, right?
Really?
yeah, and actually, like I have several in our Spanish group who do live here. They will still text me through WhatsApp. So
Interesting.
it's there. It's just not a iMessage works pretty well. We talked to Dustin through iMessage. He's in Japan. He doesn't use WhatsApp. So who knows? Who knows?
Have y'all ever used Slack?
I have not.
Never even heard of it.
Slack is it's more for business and office stuff, I think, but it's a lot like WhatsApp or whatever that you can send a lot of messages and it's instant messaging, but it's also able to send files and stuff right there within the app, and it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Slack.
Yeah, cut me some slack.
So what do you got going on today? Big plans, Mr.
Who are you
KT?
speaking to? Oh,
All of
okay.
you.
Well,
General public.
I got this notice before I got to the office this morning that my
Uh-oh.
water level may have too much lead in it. So
Ooh.
who knows? I could be dealing with that.
Dead.
Lead poisoning.
Yeah.
We've
Well-
gotten water notices a couple times, not about lead, but about that like, hey, you're on a boil water notice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Advisory,
apparently.
yeah.
Even where you're at now?
Yeah, in Gladewater. No, that's where I've never gotten it in Kansas. Well, let's say that. I think we got it once in Kansas, but we've gotten it twice so far.
Gladewater, that's not a good look for their namesake.
I know, right? But we've never lost internet or power for an extended period of time, unlike a lot of the surrounding little cities that everyone's like,
Right.
why do you live in Gladewater? You should live out here in Longview or White Oak. And I'm like, oh, but your internet was out for like 12 hours yesterday? That's why I don't live there.
You say I gotta do a podcast, man.
People die if I don't have internet. Like,
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
I cannot live without it.
Well, so far this year we have the wettest year on record. We've had 54 inches of rain this year.
Wow.
It is when people in South Louisiana are saying, "Oh my goodness, it rains so much." You know it rains a lot because
Whoa.
we're accustomed to a little bit of rain every day. But man, been brutal.
So not just California, but I guess the entire West Coast is experiencing a really dry part of the year. Like I guess a lot of like the Mead reservoir is down as low as it's ever been before, and all sorts of stuff like to the point where they're gonna like start cutting back water to Arizona, New Mexico, California, and all those places, which I
Crazy.
find really interesting. Because yeah, my dad has been talking about how it's been really hot and really dry in Oregon, which is unusual.
Not here.
It's usually very moist.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Behind the Beards, and here on Behind the Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and try to reveal the things you need to know about the people who are called to lead your churches and your ministries. I'm Joshua Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My brother from another mother, Aaron Partlow, is in Longview, Texas. And we have joining us today from Winsboro, Texas. I think that's right. KT, Kyle Thompson. KT, right?
Yeah,
or should I start calling you
here.
Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Is there a story behind that? Is there
Yeah.
a reason why you go KT and not Kyle? Or because I had to actually or Facebook you and be like, I don't even know what KT's real name is.
Well, actually, it's an interesting story that it's because of a person that grew up at the church that you're now at, Aaron. By the name of Kyle Rapp. You may know his dad there, Craig. I believe he maybe
Yeah.
a deacon even. Yeah.
It's our
Kyle
security
Rapp
guy.
joined the staff at Camp Deer Run where I was working, a number of years ago. And when he did, there was this issue of, well, we can't call Kyle because that's going to get confusing. So we allowed him to be Kyle, and a lot of guys on staff were already calling me KT, and so I just started going by KT with everybody. And when I got here back in Winsboro, everybody knew me from Deer Run and already called me KT. So now I just say it. I do the welcome on Sunday mornings, and I say, welcome, everyone. My name's KT. And we just go from there. So
It's a good nickname.
Yeah.
We had a similar story like that in the youth group. My youth minister's name was Ben, and my cousin, who's same age as me, joined the youth group, and his name was Ben. And he said, well, we can't have two Bens, and I've had the name longer, so we're going to change yours. And so we always called him Hefe. And it was always really funny when, like, my dad or one of the elders or even one of the deacons were like, hey, and Hefe's going to come up and do this announcement. And it was, like, on Sunday morning church. And I was like, that's really weird. And even now, when I go home and see him, I'm like, Hefe, how's it going? Right. Nicknames are just kind of funny how they stick.
Nicknames are funny. When I was adding in this intro here, I was like, KT, like, I don't know if KT's a first name or if it's KT something. So when you popped in, it said Kyle Thompson up there on your name. So that was quite helpful.
That was the
It'll drop in there. So
right.
Kyle Thompson.
It's fun, but it's difficult when you're meeting people who, for the first time they're expecting an actual name, and you say, "Oh, I'm KT." Like, did you say Katie? Like,
yeah.
K.
Yes.
So funny.
Katie.
I had a customer in the Cadillac store. He drove a 1983 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and his name was R.H. George. And when he went into the military, they didn't allow initials for your identification. So he went in and they said, "What's your name?" And he said, R.H. George. They said, "No, it's your real name." And he goes, "That is my real name." It's like, not just your initials. What is your name? And he said, "That is my name. That's the name my parents gave me." He showed him his driver's license, his birth certificate. So his nickname was Rio Hio because on his military ID, it said RIO for R initial only, H initial only. And so his whole time in the military, they called him Rio Hio because the software, the input device wouldn't allow a single letter for a name. So
that's interesting. That's crazy.
It's funny how things get started, huh?
They're trying to decide what to call me at Pine Tree because we have Aaron Stover, who is one of our secretaries. You have Aaron Griffith, who is our worship minister's wife, and then there's just Aaron Partlow last. So
I could just call you Mr. Partylow. That's how you come up on my phone.
Sometimes they call me Part Low. Sometimes they call me AP. Only my good friends call me Mr. Party Low. So,
Pilo. Plow.
that's what my AA Ron. I get that one a lot.
Yeah, too much, probably.
Sketch that wrecked my life. No, it
KT,
does make it easier when you go to restaurants because I hate when they take your name and then you look at it and they like spell it completely wrong. So at least I can say Aaron with 2 A's. And they're like, oh, Aaron, and I'm like, yeah,
that's the one. KT, how did you get involved in ministry as we kind of get rolling here?
Well, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I don't know how many of the listeners know about Camp Deer Run. It's a camp here in East Texas that was started back in 1958 by a guy that was actually the preacher at the church that I'm at now, oddly enough. And the funniest thing is he went and worked at a little place in Ruston, Louisiana, over at Louisiana Tech, where I ended up going to college. And so
wow.
the weirdest thing, I grew up going to Camp Deer Run. It's how I got involved in ministry from an early age. Wanted to be on staff out there, was blessed to do that for 6 summers. And in the meantime, went to college at Louisiana Tech. And while I was there, was asked by the eldership there to work with a buddy of mine, Jonathan Long. And we did 2 full years of college ministry there together before I got a call from the elders over here in Winsboro asking if I'd be interested in doing youth ministry. And so it was really interesting that the founder of Camp Deer Run was actually working in Winsboro, Texas. After he was done in Winsboro, he went and was preaching over in Ruston, Louisiana for a short time. And I kind of followed that path that he laid out there and wound up back here in Winsboro. And so never necessarily saw myself going into youth ministry. In all honesty, my passions were things like camp and college ministry. But whenever they called and started talking with me, really the eldership is the primary reason that I came here. Good group of guys, godly men who, man, it was just a spirit moment in my opinion. And I could tell you, we could be on here for a long time just discussing all of the ways that I saw God's hand at work in getting me here, but none greater, honestly, than whenever I had a meeting with them one day and they said, hey, we want to offer you the job and we want it for this amount. And I said, well, that's tough because it's not really going to allow me to save as much as I really need to. A single guy, and I said, let me pray on it, and can we talk another time soon? And they said, sure, let's talk tomorrow. And I get the phone call.
Yeah, really soon.
Right, yeah. I get the phone call from one of the elders, and I just, prayed really hard, and, man, I was up a lot that night just praying and just trying to figure out, okay, am I wrong for asking for a little bit more compensation here for this? And I talked to a bunch of good mentors, and I wrote a number down. It was about $5,000 more than what they had initially offered. And I thought, even going into that meeting, I was like, man, this is the make or break. I'm not trying to highball it and, then we'll work our way down. This is it. And I get that phone call from him, and he said, KT, we think this is God at work. We want to offer you this amount. And I told him, well, funny you say that. That's the amount that I wrote down on this piece of paper. So I guess I'm coming to Winsboro. So,
wow.
Left college ministry. That was a tough leave. I really am passionate about that work, and I love the people there in Ruston. But I've been here for 4 years, and, man, I wouldn't change a thing. Things have been going great. I love it here. It's just an awesome church and an awesome community.
So when did you go to Ruston?
I went to Ruston in 2011, the fall of 2011. I'm kind of dating myself here, but I was there for 5 years.
As the youngest on the show right now, I think you're doing pretty good.
You're dating yourself.
I'm dating myself here in 2011.
Thankfully, I think that these fluorescents are kind of hiding my gray hairs peeking through. So
yeah, they don't hide mine. You don't know Tommy and Mila Phillips, do you?
I do know Tommy and Mila very well.
Yeah, so Tommy's one of my elders here at Goodwood.
Yes.
So,
man, give them my blessing, man. That's awesome.
I will.
Send my regards.
Sounds good. It's I get a lot of stuff from the Ruston Church. Mila always brings me something that the preacher up there has written, and she's like, "Oh, I think you would like this. I think you would like this." So
My
they
buddy
hold
actually
those
told
folks
me
in high
about
esteem.
that.
Really?
The new preacher there, Jim Davis was the preacher while I was there for the longest time, and my buddy Jonathan Long, who was my co-minister in college ministry, he actually just started as the preacher there, and he mentioned that she had taken his article recently and was so proud of it and showed it to people. Turns out he borrowed it, and it says it at the top. He said, "Well, thanks, but I didn't even write that." It was really funny.
Hey, some of the best things I ever wrote were borrowed, right?
That's right. Nothing new under the sun.
It's all
right?
borrowed. That's
right.
right.
Nothing new under the sun.
That's how that
That
works.
is right. That's cool, man. I love hearing about people's story. We're all called into ministry in such beautiful and unique ways that just hearing the way people find their way to this calling is really cool. Youth rallies, man. That's what we're talking about today. Maybe for the next few weeks.
Yeah, we'll get there.
And yeah, I got to tell you, I didn't even know about youth rallies until I got to Kansas. Yeah, that just wasn't. I got out of high school. I'm going to date myself. I got out of high school in '95, and it just wasn't really a thing in Austin where I was in youth group at. We had so many things to do around, and maybe I was just too busy to recognize, or maybe my youth ministry was just out of the loop. But I got to do some work in Kansas, and they're like, youth rally. Like, what's a youth rally? And my wife grew up in Iowa, and so it was a big deal in the youth scene there. And so then I get there, and they're like, hey, by the way, you got to plan a youth rally because we host one every year. I'm like, where do I begin? So, to have had a resource like this where I could go and say, okay, how in the world do I plan a youth rally?
Yeah, and that's
First
kind of
thing,
our.
right?
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, yeah, that's kind of our idea of this kind of series or these kind of episodes is to kind of maybe create some sort of a resource for some people. I was telling KT before we started the show, I said the whole idea is like, hey, maybe you're a young guy or you volunteer at a church and they're like, hey, do you like to volunteer with the youth? And you're like, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden you find out that you're the youth minister. You looks in the bulletin and there's your name and you're like, wait, what? And so maybe this helps. I don't know. We all do things differently, but maybe seeing it from three different guys' perspectives, and as we have more hosts or more guests on and things like that, we can kind of create a safe place for people to be able to go and listen and learn some trade tricks. Is that a thing? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Trade secrets.
Trade secrets. That's
Tricks
better.
Trade secrets. That's right. So what's the first thing you think of, or the first thing you have to do when you're getting ready to plan a youth rally?
Isn't the biblical answer is well, first thing I do is pray. Right.
Okay.
It's very big.
Once you've prayed, what's the first thing you plan?
That's right. Yeah.
Man, in my mind, if it's going well and I'm in a right mindset for it, it's write out what is my goal, like what's our goal as a group, and then all the other ideas come, right? You're gonna have a million ideas of what you can do, but if you don't decide on your goal, then those ideas are just gonna be that. They're just gonna be a bunch of good ideas. And honestly, I think what you'll end up finding is, as you're getting started, you're going to be excited. You're going to be ready for all these things to happen. And then if you throw it all together you forget about the main goal, then you, at the end of the day, look back and you say, man, I did all of this work. And the kids were just like, meh.
Right.
And it's because...
I've
It's
been
because,
there.
well, maybe you forgot your main goal. Like, what is it? What is your purpose for doing it? And then I think what you find is you can have a much more purposeful time if you write it down. What is your goal? And then filter every idea through that.
Yeah.
That's just, to me, that's the biggest thing, whether I'm writing a lesson or planning a youth event or what. So, yeah.
And I think when we boil that down too, like there's no necessarily a wrong goal, but like that whole idea, like, hey, the entire goal of this youth rally is to connect these churches for these connections and to build these relationships. Or the entire part of this goal of this youth rally is, I think that there is something that's affecting this community that we need to gather together and really communicate and talk about as the Christian community in this area. Or, and so I think there's lots of different kind of goals. So if you're sitting there and you're like, well, I don't even know like what a goal is. Like, those are some examples of what may be a goal for that. Sometimes for me, it's, hey, my goal is to get to know as many people in the surrounding area as possible. And to, like, for my youth group recently, like, we just hosted a youth rally, a Netsis Day at our church. One of those goals for me was to get my youth group into more relationships, into more friendships with this group, and to create so many little events that allows my youth group to kind of branch out. KT, I didn't tell you this, but I was so excited because Wednesday night, which it's kind of cool to like do a youth rally on a Thursday, right? And you have a Wednesday night class before, because you get to ask them what they're most excited for. And a bunch of my kids were naming off different kids who were at the last Netsis Day, and they're like, "Oh, I hope they come. Oh, I hope they come. Oh,
That's
I hope."
awesome.
And I was like, "Yeah, that is awesome. That's great. I'm excited for that kind of a feeling." Josh, you had something?
Yeah, you guys are just, like blowing people's minds here, trying to convince people that youth ministers actually have goals.
Right? Yeah.
That's not a thing, is it? No, I like that, starting with a goal in mind. I think too frequently we try to bypass that, and we have to go to like, I got to create a theme.
Right. Yeah.
And then let the theme kind of control everything. And you can do that, but I think you miss an opportunity. And it's kind of akin to, what do I want to say in my lesson, and where do I go in Scripture to support what I want to say in my lesson, as opposed to just saying, let's open up Scripture and let's see what Scripture says, and then from that we're going to then teach. And so setting that goal right up front gives you a framework you can hang everything on. Hey, this event is awesome. Does it fit my goal? If it doesn't fit my goal, then that really awesome event probably needs to wait till another time, and let's find something that actually, moves us further along this path.
Absolutely.
But yeah, goal setting is it's important with everything. It's important, that it's one of the first things you do is say, what do we want to accomplish? What do we need to accomplish? And what is God really pushing us to do in this community, in our church, in our broader spectrum, or a broader environment, to kind of set that path forward. So that's good. That's I don't want to say it's not something I'd thought about, but as I was kind of thinking through it, is like, what is the first thing you do? Like in my mind, even I had skipped over goal setting to like a theme.
Right,
when you said, the first thing is set a goal, I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely the first thing you have to do. So
Yeah.
Right.
that's great.
I also think like it's really good to search for that help. I have been on the mountaintop alone planning events, and I have been in the valley chilling with people who want to help and support and be there. And it is way more fun to be in the valley than on the mountaintop. And it can really steal the joy out of things if you are the only one working and running things. And so I even think when you're starting to approach and come up with these goals, like it's even easier to work, even if it's just over lunch, talking about, hey, what's the major goal? And of course that goes into a philosophy of youth ministry, and having a team and having people who are excited and willing to be there to help out as a whole. And so even if you're sitting there and thinking this is a one-man show, it's not. There's a lot of prep, a lot of help that goes into that. And so even using a team. So those are kind of some of the first things that I think of, is setting a goal. Who can I get? Who wants to help out and be a part of this? And how can I give them a slice of the pie and really allow them to like own that piece and do that?
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this later so we can actually make notes to add into like some show notes and things to have that are portable, because it's really good. One of the big things is pressure, right? I mean, you're creating this event,
Right.
and you know that you're gonna, pump it up to your people and your kids and your parents, but then there's this pressure of, are people going to show up?
Oh, yeah.
And so, what do you do to get people? Are there ways that you have of promoting an event like this to the people around you? Obviously, it helps to have a core group like Netsis, right? Let's say in Baton Rouge, where we don't have a SLATSIS, South, whatever it is, South Louisiana
I don't know what
youth
you just
summer
said.
youth series.
I'm pretty sure that was offensive to somebody.
Don't put that on a hat.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's funny. What are some ways that you reach out?
Well, I mean, for me, I know I go back to my college ministry days where when I started out, it was kind of put to us that, hey, this is a ministry that's at a specific church, but it's funded by a whole lot of other churches in, the North Louisiana area there. And so I got real used to or real comfortable with cold calling, and you call a church 5 or 6 times, get an answering machine half the time, and then the random lady who's up there because she forgot her casserole dish, and even these small churches that may not even have a youth minister are going to have people, and they're going to have some youth there that, you finally get in touch with somebody and they're going to love to be a part of it. And so my least favorite thing to do, but it's the thing that I see churches do most often, is they get somebody on a computer with the best heart and the best intentions, and they type up something using Microsoft Word 93. You know about that, right, Josh? So, and they do it to the best of their ability, and I commend them for it. But I will tell you this much: me as a youth minister, especially, and I think anybody working in a church, is much more likely to respond to somebody calling and saying, "Hey, this is the thing we're doing. These are all the things we have going on. This is our goal. We would love for you to come and be a part of it. If you're interested, I'd love to come have a cup of coffee with you and tell you more about it. If you're just maybe not so sure about me or our church or whatever, I think really it's the doing the hard work of face-to-face vocal interaction, because your voice, your tone that you're using in your messaging is going to be, it's going to be what inspires people rather than that flyer, that random text or email. So that's
I was
just
gonna
my
say, I as a youth minister, like I have a box that I rarely check. I'm really bad at checking it. At Central, it was really cool. I had a box. It was right next to my door, so it was like I had to see it. So it was at Pine Tree. It's kind of like tucked away in another room, so maybe I can get a box for my door. That might help with that. But anyway, yeah, like just getting a random flyer in the mail from a church that I haven't heard from. I think that's happened to me, where I've gotten a random flyer and I'm like, do you guys even know where this church is at? Like I've never heard of this church, and you ask, do they have a youth minister? Do they have like, who's leading this? Is this like, you have all these
the
questions. You have all these questions as a youth worker or as anybody involved that, like, as a youth minister, like I answer all those questions all the time to parents. And so like I can kind of see like when they're frustrated because they're like, I haven't gotten that information. Then like I'm like, oh, it is frustrating when you don't get that information, And
Right.
so yeah, I agree. Like when you're reaching out, I think trying to establish some sort of a connection. I think you when I went back to starting with a group, like it's great to have a group of people from your church to be able to help. But if you can pull in other congregations to kind of help and have some skin in the game, right? For the youth rally, that helps even more. Even if you having somebody come in and doing worship or doing registration or whatever it is, so that they feel a part of it, you're building those relationships. And so I agree with KT. Like if I get a random flyer, 9 times out of 10, it's going in the recycling, unless somebody tells me otherwise. Like, oh, this is something we always go to. if I get a call from another youth minister or whoever's in charge of it, and they want to meet up or they want to talk about it, yeah, man, I'm game. Let's do it. And there are some occasions now, like I've gotten a couple here at Pine Tree, where I'm like, well, maybe I'll just go. You know, that's the big concern for me is like if I've never been before, my church has never been before, there's a good chance I'm not going to just bring my youth group. But there's a small chance that I might just go and be like the weird adult who shows up for a youth rally, you know? And I'm like, you know, that's when it's nice. Side note, that's when it's really nice if you have a company or a group or someone that you can go to that kind of can help. I'm trying to do this really quick. Anyway, when you can have like a company like Sunday Cool,
Man, wouldn't that be
who
cool?
can create T-shirts or hats or masks or bandanas or all sorts of anything to have your brand on it. So like I will, if I just cold, it's like the opposite of cold calling, but if I just will go to a youth rally to just check it out, that is when I am decked out in all my Pine Tree stuff. So people know like, hey, I'm not just some weirdo. Like I am a youth minister at Pine Tree, and I'm here to check it out and stuff like that. So if you guys have those kind of needs, and or you're starting out in youth ministry, or even doing a youth rally, talk to Sunday Cool. They are super quick. They're super fast at being able to get that turnaround and get those to you. Even if you are as bad as me and give them like 2 weeks notice, they're like, okay, well then we need you to finalize this so that we can print these for you.
They also have super soft prints on super soft tees.
Super soft prints, and they're starting to do hats now too. And
Yeah,
their hats
that's right.
are super great. So, and that's another thing that we can talk about in a minute. But so Josh, what about you? I know you were part of leading the youth rally up in Kansas City, right? That was called, what was that?
Youth rally.
Wasn't
Oh, no. The big one in February was Youth in Action.
Youth in Action?
yeah.
Youth rally.
No, so
Classic
we had a series. We had a series of youth rallies, and the hard thing about them was that you had the same kind of group of people that all went together, but there wasn't any kind of organization between the churches. And so to get into the circle or the cycle of rallies that everybody went to was hard, because you had to find a weekend that wasn't taken but was still kind of available for everyone. But Youth in Action had been there for a while, and it was similar to Winterfest, kind of an event. So it was bigger. We held it in a hotel. It wasn't at a church. But like you said, Aaron, one of the key things was getting 3 or 4 churches involved
Right.
in the planning, where everybody, like you said, had some skin in the game. So you have people who are there who had a reason to want to bring kids. So when you talk about reaching out, flyers, whether or not you, they don't always intentionally go in the trash, but they're really easy to get lost.
Right.
But once you make that personal connection, then you can bring them something physical as a reminder. But because it has that personal impact that goes with it, you have a reason for them to want to engage and say, okay, well, this is something I want to hang up, and we're going to post, and we're going to talk about it, as opposed to another piece of paper that just so easily kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So
If you can make it off of my desk and onto my Google Calendar, you've
a
made
big
some
leap.
groundwork for me. Like that's if it's on my Google Calendar, then I'm seeing it every day. If it's just a flyer sitting on my desk, then even if it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna meet with so and so from this church, so I'm gonna put it on my Google Calendar. That's just something that I've always done. It keeps me on track. It gives me a record of kind of some of the places I've been and what I've been doing. So
Yeah.
that kind of helps. What else?
having go to things is helpful, though, right? Some kind of core, and just I'm a little jealous, of you guys, because
Should be.
having an organization like Netsis is something that is so instrumental in the success of the whole thing. right? Something that
Yeah.
kind of binds you together and holds you kind of accountable to a group. But some go-to activities, go-to things. You have any go-to, like poor man sumo?
Your must-haves at a youth rally. I would say for me, like my number one must-have, by shaving them off. Thanks, Red. Anyway, my must-have like at a youth rally is good worship. Like that is my number one. That's my number one thing. If you want my kids locked in, if you want me locked in, it doesn't matter if I think everything else is corny, everything else is cheesy. If I don't know, like you make me spend 90% of the time, standing, or something like that, where I'm like, I just want to sit. Like if we have good worship, like it's good. Like, and I don't mean like you have to have like the world's best singer or anything like that. Like that's not what I mean. I mean like meaningful, guided worship that is leading us through this. That it's intentional. That it's not like if you love Jesus, clap your hands right into there's a stirring deep, then right back to I got the joy. Like where are we going here? Like are we staying in VBS realm? Are we going a little bit deeper? Like I don't know what's going on. And so like for me, like it has to be meaningful and well thought out, worship. And somewhere that's gonna really guide us. That's my must. Like that's almost the first thing that I look for. I was blessed in order to have a worship minister here at Pine Tree.
Absolutely.
And so I went to him and I was like, listen, what can I do to get you to lead worship at Netzis Day? And he was like, just ask. And I was like, will you? And he's like, no. And I was like, what? No, he said absolutely. He said he would love to. And so, man, that just like, I don't know. For me, Thursday at that Netzis Day, that it was awesome. So, what about you guys? What are some like absolute musts?
I mean, for me, kind of going back to what you talked about earlier, is just I think
that's a good question.
the people that you have with you, I think something that's a must-have is buy-in from everybody. Buy-in for what it is that you're there for. I will say that growing up, I went to a few youth rallies, not a lot, but I went to a few youth rallies where the people leading it seemed like everybody was not really on the same page, and there was a lot of people wanting to maybe do very different things. And so luckily for us with Netzis, we're all pretty on the same page about things, that we all kind of have the same goals in mind when it comes to these events. But just to show up at an event like we hosted there at Pine Tree, where man, a lot of it worked like clockwork, and a lot of it was because you had all these people that were wanting to help and volunteer and be there, and everybody was bought into why we were there. And does that mean there were no hiccups? Not at all. There were certainly some things. There were certainly some times where we had to stop and discuss, like, hey, wait, what are we doing here? But man, the buy-in is crucial in my opinion. So
Yeah, it is. It is really important to have that, have the buy-in. Worship, I agree, is one of those really, really key aspects. For me also, and I think it goes back to what we began with, is a sense of direction, and something that's going to be meaningful and impactful for me or for my kids. Are you going to give me something that I can put into my own life and into my kids' hands that's going to make them desire to be a Christian in a better way tomorrow? Because, youth rally kind of, we can get all the rah-rah stuff you want. I want something that's going to challenge them, and it's going to convict them, and it's going to inspire them to be better.
Right.
And so that's what I look for, not just in planning, but also in kind of attending them. It's one of the things that really drew me to Soul Quest, and one of the things that I really kept my kids there for is because they had a blast. They had so much fun. But the conversations afterwards were all about, you know, things they learned in class, and the fun stuff was secondary. So it really became about, in a fun way, promoting Christian living.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really good things, I think, that anchor us there. You
Moving
want to talk about
down-
this question?
Yeah, just one moment. Moving down my list is something that my kids can take home. I want something that they're going to talk about tomorrow and the next week. Whether it is like, I would hope that it would be like the passion, the meaning, and what we're talking about, but also like something like crazy or fun that like you only get to do at a youth rally. Like I remember there was one youth rally back in like 2004 that I remember going to, and they were like, "Come, we're gonna smash a 40-something inch box television." And I was like, "What? That's crazy!" As a junior hire, like I went, and it was a really good youth rally. We had good worship. There's fun activities, but yeah, like they had, it was a gimmick. They had a crane and they raised up a television that was saran wrapped, and they dropped it off of that forklift. And that represented, there was a meaning behind that, and I could go into, because I can remember what the spiritual meaning behind all of that was, and what that youth rally was about. But I remember talking about that. I remember being excited about that. And so it gave me something that I was really pulled into and interested in. So we have this comment, how do you connect to youth in a joint event where there are multiple churches with different styles? We'll leave that up so we can comment on that. What do you guys think? It's a good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And like, I guess in one sense, if it is just about me, trying to do my best, to put my best foot forward and do my thing in the way that I've planned and the way that I've organized, that's going to get me in trouble. In moments like that, I think you really have to really be in tune with the way the Spirit of God is leading. And I think if you have, and I think if you have created, if you've done the work of setting the goal, and everything that you have done leading up to that has been in line and in step with that, then you get to a place where you acknowledge that, there are a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different expectations. And you set the expectation up front that none of you are in your regular circle, in this way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to do our best to make sure that, number one, we don't violate anyone's conscience, but number two, we don't hinder the way the Spirit's going to move in this day, week, or weekend, whatever it is. And you set that kind of right up front. I think we have a responsibility for that as planners, but I think as individual youth ministers, we know when we're taking our kids to a place that's a little different than what we're accustomed to. And so I have a responsibility to set their expectations as well, on kind of what to expect, how we can learn and how we can grow, and also what to expect when, we come back home. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, to point on that, like when we take our group to Winterfest, there are things at Winterfest that would never happen, where I was working at the time, kind of a thing. And maybe something that I wasn't actually like super comfortable with either. But the whole idea was, hey, we're going to go and we're going to stretch and we're going to grow and we're going to fellowship with people who maybe worship differently than us, who want to play games differently than us or do things a little bit different than us. And that whole experience is to grow in that fellowship. And so I agree. I think if you're doing the actual work and you follow some of these steps that we've talked about, like reaching out and making those personal connections, then I think that you are taking this big pill of humility, and that you're willing to, to try to accommodate, multiple churches with different styles. Like you're able to, and you're trying to do that, and you're trying to find like this middle ground where you can all feel comfortable. I was involved heavily with this group called ShareFest, And that's what this reminds me of. Like, primarily a lot of our listeners grow up in the Churches of Christ, and for the most part, like, we can all play along mostly pretty well. As I was saying that, I was thinking otherwise, but most of the time, like, we can play together pretty well and do these kind of things. But ShareFest was a different thing. ShareFest was not tied to any denomination. Matter of fact, it was the opposite. They tried to open it up to everybody, and it was just the church or churches in general getting together, working together for one common goal. And they did, in the afternoon, they had a worship service where they offered food and everything like that. And to see how delicately and how, you get people who are Lutheran, who are Catholic, who are Baptist, who are First Baptist, who are Church of Christ and Pentecostal. I think even the Jewish synagogue was involved as well. Like, you had all of these different, kind of Christian, in the synagogue and some Jewish people, like, trying to work together for this same cause of making the community better. And so I think when you try to get behind that idea, that's how you do it. So that's how I connect my youth group is one, there's some groundwork that's laid before. Like, hey, we're going to grow. It might be different. Two, like, if I'm hosting the youth rally, I'm having those conversations with other churches and trying to accommodate. I'm not going to let them run over me and say, hey, this is how it's going to be, or we're not going to come. I'm going to say, hey, I don't think that's the right spirit or the right attitude for this youth rally. And so I want to be able to accommodate and kind of help. And if we can't find a meeting point, then, I apologize, but it was really good meeting you. And I'm glad that we were able to have this personal connection. So right. I think all those things are kind of important. I also just think it's not, this is not something that you just do willy-nilly, right? You just kind of throw out there and start going. There is a lot of kind of more prep work and that kind of stuff. So thanks for the question. That was good. What are or KT, did you have a point to kind of add to that, or?
No, I have a very similar situation here where, kind of funny you say it, earlier on when you were mentioning these events and these youth rallies, the purpose behind them. Here in Winsboro, I came into this community, and they've been doing a youth rally here ever since the Columbine shooting. One of the youth ministers here, who's now I think over 60 years old, he's been in youth ministry for about 40 years or so. Wow. He started it as a need, and the church that I'm at here has been a part of it some, but not a lot since before I got here. But I was welcomed in by all these other churches here in town and the youth ministries there to be able to be a part of the conversation of, hey, how are we going to do this, and whether or not we'd be involved in it. And so I think what Josh was saying is a very good point. For me, the goals that I have with my youth, there are benefits that I see in us being a part of something like that. It gets questions going, and it allows me to answer questions that they probably wouldn't ask me otherwise. And so that's the approach I take. I'm very intentional about it. We don't go into it lightly. We warn our parents ahead of time that, hey, worship's not going to look like what we're used to. This event is not going to be like what we're used to. But I can assure you this, that if there's things that are completely contrary to the Word of God, then we're not going to be a part of it.
Right.
We tend to stand on the things that we can all agree with, and that tends to be Jesus, funnily enough. And so it's been really nice to have those conversations with the kids of, hey, why are we different? Well, we like this and they like that. And we have those conversations, and they're hard conversations. They're not easy, but I don't think it should ever be in our intentions with the youth, especially, to shy away from questions. I think the more questions, the better. That means they're interested and they want to learn. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And Red's coming up with some really good questions, man. And I think this one,
does.
That's what he does. This one is probably good for another show, probably a little bit later, as we talk about what happens as our planning goes on.
And even if you go back and you look, we talked with Josh Jones kind of a little bit about this, about, what you've done when you notice when you're youth group.
Yeah, but everything is always on the table. But maybe even like mid-event, I've seen sometimes where some of my kids really kind of check out in the middle of a camp or a retreat or something,
or a winter fest.
Or a winter fest, yeah.
And it's only like 3 days.
Normal youth events are way easier to handle than that one, man. You're in that big room with all those people. There's not much you
Right?
can do to gain their interest. It's you're at the behest of the people on the stage. So
Right.
anyway,
And sometimes they have a little more control than others, right?
right.
It's we're running a little bit late. Do you have time for stories? Or we push that for another one?
We can push that for another one. I wanted to really get into the, we talked about what are some of the goes, the must things that we have to have, but what are some of the must nots? Real quick, is there any like absolutely not, or better yet, like how about just one story from somebody about like I did this and I will never do this again, like it was just bad. Anybody have anything off the top of
I
their
have
head?
a story that's more from whenever I was a youth myself, and what I saw happen.
There you go.
Man, too much downtime is a absolutely not.
Yeah, there's a balance.
There's a balance, and I will tell you, whenever I was a youth myself, we went to this event, and there was probably 3 or 4 hours of downtime each day.
Whoa.
And I kid you not, we were on campus up at Oklahoma Christian for it, and me and some people that I wasn't really that close to, but they were the people that I met while I was there. We'd like go and walk through the culverts and stuff on campus, and just like, I mean, we weren't necessarily doing anything bad, but I don't know, just I look back in that memory, and man, I remember that. I oddly remember that more than I remember anything else that we did, and it was probably because, man, we spent too much time just dictating ourselves what we're going to do with our time, and kids already do that enough. And so,
Right.
anyway, if I could recommend anything, don't have too much downtime. Be intentional with your time. Have specific downtime, but make it purposeful. So,
Yeah, even free time can be structured, right?
exactly.
Like when you have a big group of kids, there is no such thing as free time.
Correct.
Right.
We're going to call it free time, but in that free time, you're going to have choices on where you get to spend that free time.
Exactly.
Idle hands or the devil's workshop. Don't forget it. Bank on it. It just creates issues. That was going to be mine as well. Just downtime. Be intentional with the downtime.
Man, mine was not. Mine was like we once did an encounter where I had to pretend to be really angry at the camp and upset. And I will never do that again because and it was intentional. So like it was legitimately all set up. Like I was mad.
bad.
And I sent them all to bed early. We had kids planted in each cabin that were supposed to like tempt the kids. Like, hey, Aaron can't shut down camp, so let's go sneak out and go to the baseball field and have worship. Or, hey, let's go down to the pond. And it was like a really good, like, it was really well thought out. It was really well structured. And there were 3 kind of ideas that were going to happen there. They were either going to sneak out and go do worship, or B, they were going to go, go play games, or, they were going to stay in their room. And then I was going to call them all back in, and we are going to do worship, and then we were going to, continue with that worship, and then kind of talk about, the temptations and what voices are we listening to in our lives, and are we going to allow someone to stop us and be a front from worshiping and praising Jesus, In my head, it worked out really good. The kids actually handled it really well. The kids did exactly what they were supposed to do. It worked out flawlessly with the kids.
You executed it well.
And it was executed almost perfectly. And the teens that I chose to tempt and do all that other stuff did their job perfectly. Like better than any counselor I ever had. What I lost was some of the adult chaperones who had never experienced an encounter before, who had never had a friendship or relationship with me. It was their first weekend there, ever seeing me, who just, even with me sitting down and explaining it and talking about it and going through it step by step, had no buy-in, had no trust. And even though the devotional went good, even though the kids talked about it for the rest of the week, and it was like, in my brain at the start, it was a success. It wasn't till afterwards when, you know, I had parents calling me and stuff like that. And it wasn't because of the teens. It was because some of those adult chaperones were like, well, I didn't like this, and I thought this was wrong, and this was bad, and yada, yada, yada. And so that's one of those things where I was like, you know, even if it's doing a lot of good, if I'm going to cause that kind of distress, if it's going to put some sort of a wall between some of these, some chaperones or parents or even another congregation, you know, maybe I'll rethink that. Maybe we can get there a different way than that kind of an idea.
So I would say your do not there is do not lose sight of your whole audience.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you have kids, you have youth ministers. Be aware of all of those fringe people that are there.
Well, and
how
an idea will come across to like really think about your big ideas like that and how it'll be perceived from everyone's eyes. We once did a youth rally when I was in youth group that was a mock funeral. And I actually I put gray in my hair, and I was the pastor or the preacher who was doing this funeral. We had a family who had a coffin. I don't even know how they got it. And we had a teenager. Like, we legitimately did a mock funeral.
I'm not surprised at all.
And had a teen who everyone knew. And he was on stage and in this coffin, and we showed some videos and shared some stories and all this. And we talked about, like, the reality. And it was a good youth rally. But again, didn't know, but we had an adult who came and joined us, and he was very upset the entire time. Turns out, like 2 years ago, he had buried one of his child. And so for the pure reason of the fact that this reminded him of the death of one of his kids, you know, that made it very difficult and very hard for him. As a teenager, I was like, this is a crazy idea. And as people were coming in, we were giving them like, hey, here's the funeral, brochure. That's not what it is. It's a, what's it called? When you hand out that piece of paper. Program. Yeah, kind of a program, kind
Eulogy
of a thing. All that kind of stuff. I mean, so knowing how that's going to really hit everybody and trying to, you know, be a little bit more sensitive to some of that kind of stuff. I would say that's your really good behind the beard. That was when I was a teen in the youth group. So that one's not on me.
Hey, real quick for you. You talk about how everything's going to hit people. On a little lighter note, whenever I was working at Deer Run, a good friend of mine, I did her cabin Bible with her 10 to 12 girls, where they walked up the hill and she was teaching them about when Jesus said, the person who is without sin, throw the first stone. And she had all her girls grab a stone and basically say, if you think this, and long story short, she basically got stoned. So really think through how everything's going to hit everyone.
Literally.
I mean, even on little stuff like that, you know.
That is a lighter note, and that is
hilarious.
That is pretty funny. Well, KT, I am excited. I'm thankful that you are here with us today, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And hopefully, we'll be able to have you on more in the future if you would be interested. Sure. If not, don't say anything now.
That's right.
Just PM me later. Be like, I hated Behind the Beards. But we want to thank you all for being here today, and we want to thank you all for listening to the podcast. If you're just tuning in and listening, we appreciate you guys, and we hope that this is something that is helpful to you, helpful to other people that you know. And so if you find it that way, please just let us know. And if you have questions or have interest in kind of future shows that you would like us to talk about, let us know as well. Email us. Let us know on Instagram or Facebook. Not Twitter. We don't ever use our Twitter. But let us know in all those other places. But we want to. But we do have one. But we do have one. But we want to thank you guys for being here today. But we also want to remind you of this. We always want to leave you with this. Galatians 6:9. Do not grow weary in doing good. Man, this world is messy. Life is messy. Things are hard. It's difficult. Everyone is struggling. We all have something to be frustrated with. But we got to really focus on this. You know, don't grow weary in doing good. Do something different. Do something good in Jesus' name, and allow Christ to use you to do that. My name's Aaron. This is Josh and KT, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Yeah, we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Oh, it's good stuff. I'm thinking about leaving this up a little bit afterwards to get a little bit of a Marvel end scene. Who will sing around until after the credits?
So don't say any bad words right at the end of this.